watch Perverts.
Hey everybody. So tonight I am looking to discuss Ethel Cain's newest, and that is Perverts. This was released, I believe, early January 2025, and I didn't rush to get this one out because I just kept getting lost in it. I love it when a drone-focused album is released that feels this genuine. Like, there's no part of this feels forced or contrived. Because what I found a lot of the times with albums that are based around drones, you know, pulsing synths or more atmospheric tracks that are supposed to sort of swell at the edges of reality, I find that a lot of the times there's a sense of laziness that gets tossed into it, whereas like the person just essentially pressed down a key on like a MIDI keyboard, taped it down or whatever with some like playing, and then they walked away for 15 minutes, then came back and then untaped the key and were like, the track's finished. But this is so swallowing and it's so suffocating, and this whole record is so completely claustrophobic. And that's what I love about it. With like, I mean, every single song. I mean, the album opens up with the title track, Perverts. And I mean, on one hand, you could argue that is just about the worst song you could open an album with. But then that sort of all-encompassing sense of dread that is explored so completely and so fully over the course of I think the track is roughly 12 minutes long. I'm going to assume it's 12 minutes. You'd think I would have written this down, but of course I didn't. And over the course of the 10 plus minutes of the opening track, Perverts, I just kept finding myself sort of getting lost in its abyss. And I loved that. Now, I will argue that maybe the second track, Punish, that should have been the album opener, because as far as I'm concerned, Punish is one of the best songs she's ever written. Punish is one of the best songs I've heard over the past year or two. Easily one of the best songs I've heard over the past couple years. And the music video that accompanies it is so honestly terrifying. Cain has a way, you know, Hayden has a way, Mother Cain, assuming you follow her on Instagram. She has a way of making everything feel really real. And that's another thing I love about her, is it's like everything about that girl just drips, I'm in a cult. Like her tattoos are like some of the best tattoos I've ever seen in my life. Like, I love how I really get the vibe that Ethel Cain is in a cult. She looks like she's in a cult, you know? Everything about her is very cultish. So this record being her second full length, which of course is not part of the trilogy that she started with Preacher's Daughter. See, Preacher's Daughter was supposed to be the first of 3 records. And Preacher's Daughter is about family trauma, religious indoctrination, sex abuse, whereas this record is a more cheerier take on pedophilia and sex abuse. My point being, this record is in no way cheerier than Preacher's Daughter. This record, I suppose the only thing that really bashes this record somewhat is it tends to collapse under its own emotional weight. And that's about the only negative thing I can think to say about this. It doesn't matter. I mean, my favorite tracks on here are Punish, Pull Drone, and Etienne, assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly, the piano-based Etienne. Vacillator, again, which is, if I'm not mistaken too, I think Vacillator is the only song on here to employ drums. And Amber Waves, which is the album closer. Now, like I said, having Punish open the album, I think would have been a catchier way of doing things, even though I would not argue in any way that Punish is catchy. It's an incredibly killer song, but it's not really fun. And my God, now, forever, whenever I think of the track Punish, I think of the music video. Jesus, like that music video is like a living nightmare. And so I like how much effort she puts into everything. Like the track Punish, for example, is about a pedophile, somebody who victimizes children, sort of reopening their wound in order to continuously feel the damage that they've done to their victims. and I suppose through that, the damage they've done to themselves. It also is a nod back to, I can't remember the father's name, but the piece of shit that was molesting his kid back in 83 and 84, Jeff Doucette. He got really famous because it was captured live, and every news outlet in the world seemed to syndicate this shot of the dad shot him as he was walking past a series of payphones. His dad was, the victim's father was pretending to be on the phone, and as Doucette walked by, he spun around and shot him in the head. Now, I was alive when that happened. Well, the first time I saw that footage was in Faces of Death. I think it was the first Faces of Death? Well, it would have to be the first. No, well, maybe not. I'm not 100%. I know it was the Faces of Death series. I think it was the first one. And so that sort of ugly criminality that is attached to that track, and the fact that it's so openly about pedophilia and how it's through the eyes of the perpetrator, is so disgusting on one hand, but so, I don't know, so interesting, and so it's such a unique take on things, because traditionally, if you're going to tackle issues that sensitive, usually you just focus on the victim. You don't ever try to see it through the eyes of the victimizer. So I thought that was really fun. I know too the short stories of Donald Pollock come into this record at some point. But for me, I've noticed a lot of reviewers had said that this album reminds them of like the band Low, and their at least their earlier records from the 90s, which I couldn't agree more with. That is kind of Ethel Cain's sound in a nutshell, is very low-ish. And they also compared it to Aphex Twin's ambient tracks. And again, I don't disagree, but I noticed that nobody ever made the comparison to this record and Godspeed You Black Emperor's F-sharp, A-sharp Infinity. Because I am telling you, the Dead Flag Blues could find a home on this album so easily. And it's wild that nobody really made the comparison. Even the album art from this is kind of reminiscent of the album art from F-sharp, A-sharp. I mean, they're nothing alike, but they're incredibly alike. And I find that the tone of this record matches the tone of F-sharp. The songwriting, the composition, that cinematic sense of like blocking in a sense. Like I always got the vibe from Cain's stuff that she was really into movies, because it seems like there's a strong sense of more audio-based cinematography at play. It's almost like she has the songs being blocked in place of where like you would find cameras or actors, you know? And that's exactly how I felt. I felt that there is a heavy cinematic twist to Godspeed's earlier work, especially F-sharp. And if I'm not mistaken, F-sharp opens up with the Dead Flag Blues, which starts with a monologue that the band leader, Ephraim, he was working on a movie. And it had something to do with something that happens in a post-apocalyptic world, or it has to do with the end of the world. Especially, you'll understand what I mean if you choose to check out the Dead Flag Blues. You'll understand that very quickly. And the spoken word elements on this album seem to sort of mirror the Dead Flag Blues from Godspeed. And again, I'm just really surprised that nobody else made the comparison to Ethel Cain and Godspeed You Black Emperor. Like, well, this record, from Ethel Cain and Godspeed's earlier stuff. It's wild. And I also like, too, how all of Cain's stuff sort of has a Nicole Dollanganger vibe to it. Or maybe Nicole Dollanganger is influenced by Ethel Cain. I'm not actually 100%, but I do really like how Cain's vocals echo Dollanganger's vocals, and for that matter, Dollanganger's vocals, how they echo Cain's vocals. I love that as well. And I like how this album seems to be more of a study in sexual deviancy. It seems to be more analytical, whereas with Preacher's Daughter, I found it was more from a folklorish Americana sort of family trauma. Whereas this here, it seems to be more of a more far-reaching look at an overall sense of perversion. And I really liked that as well. I loved the album artwork, sorry. My favorite songs on here are Punish, Pull Drone, Amber Waves. Wait, did I already do this earlier? And Vacillator. Etienne, too, which is so reminiscent of Godspeed You Black Emperor, especially their earlier stuff again. This record is perfect. I will say, if you're more of a casual listener of Cain stuff, like say you love like Crush, for example, you're not going to last 5 minutes with this album, because this record is not for a casual fan. The stuff on here, the longer, more droning aspects remind me of everything that Relapse was doing through their Desolation House imprint from way back in the early 2000s with bands like Subterranean Source and Grunt Splatter, and Christian Renew, the Bastard Noise split that they did together, the Japanese Torture Comedy Hour. And what I like about it is all of those bands are legit heavy into the whole dark ambient thing. And this doesn't come off like it's somebody attempting to sort of shoehorn their way into that scene. This feels like Cain has been into this stuff her whole life, despite the fact that I don't even think she's 27 yet. It feels really genuine and really real. And I like how it just oozes dread and terror. Like there's like a supernatural sense of some sort of coming apocalypse. And I just love that. And seeing as how this has been running for like 11 minutes, I'm stopping it there. So like always, thank you so much for hanging out with me for just about 11 minutes while I discussed Ethel, Cain's newest full length. And that is the very recently released Perverts. Like always, if you like this review or you like this record, don't forget to go out and do something nice for somebody. It's simple. Hold the door for somebody or give $1 to charity the next time you're at Walmart. But most importantly, never forget that the world is actually a better place because you are in it. You guys are amazing. I'm getting out of here. Have a good night.